Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a horror comedy from Australia and the USA. It's a joint venture released in the year 2017, English language, directed by Chris Peckover, and this film is called Better Watch Out. So Better Watch Out is set in Christmas. You've got this kid who's 12 years old who's been looked after by a very attractive babysitter who he really likes. So he wants to prove to this babysitter that he has what it takes to be her man, but she says, look, you're too young, we'll just be friends. But he doesn't want to stay friends, he's not content with that, so he wants to try and find a way to prove that he's much more macho than she thinks. So he gets the opportunity when he realizes that the house has been broken into. So the house invaders are there for unknown reasons, but the boy is going to show this woman that he can actually look after her. But unfortunately, there are complications to the issue that make this situation very awkward, that leads down very macabre paths that not only threaten Christmas, but also their lives. So whether or not they can actually last this evening is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Better Watch Out. I was very disappointed that this movie really got no attention. So as far as actually watching this movie is concerned, I stumbled upon this by chance. I saw this on the website for my local cinema that was actually showing, and so I thought, Better Watch Out. I had never really heard of that before. Let's do a little bit of research to see what this is about. And so when I saw that it was a joint venture between Australia and the USA, I thought definitely have to go out there and see it. It has an Australian cast, which is something that really enticed me to go and actually see for myself whether or not this would be a memorable experience. But I think the most unfortunate thing with Australian cinema in particular is that it really does go under the radar. When it comes to, you see the boards as far as cinemas are concerned, it's all polluted with American stuff, and so when Australian stuff comes out, no one really wants to see it. And I think that's down to the fact that in the past Australia has produced some really shockingly bad films, in that they're made for TV romantic dramas that just don't capture the audience. And so when you see that for long enough, you start to become disheartened by Australian cinema, and you don't want to really watch it. And so that really does have a negative effect on the very good Australian films. You know, case in point, Wolf Creek, you've got Killing Ground, all these films that really are very good, but they are victim to the crap that's come before it. And so that's what I think Better Watch Out actually suffers from, is that it is an Australian production, and because of that, I don't think the people who actually marketed this film realised that it would, they didn't think that it would really sell. And so I think that's what part of the reason why this movie got no recognition whatsoever. So I had expectations. The expectations were fairly low because I didn't see the trailer very deliberately, so I was giving this every opportunity to impress me, but my curiosity levels were at an absolute high. But after seeing the film, I will say that I was really disappointed with it. Now, not only is it neglecting Australia, now this is a very small, minute problem, is that it's an Australian co-production, and I think the Australian side of it was neglected, is that it's definitely a movie that was targeted at an American audience. You know, you've got a seasonal horror film, and I love seasonal horror movies, but this is definitely a white Christmas. Now, white Christmas is associated with Northern Hemisphere, because here in Australia it's summer during Christmas. We don't have that white Christmas, and so I thought to myself, okay, this is definitely an American flavour. And so you've got an Australian cast that also have American accents, and so I thought, okay, well, it would have been nice as an Australian native to actually see an Australian co-production that actually pays respect to Australia. I thought Australia was just in the background, it really wasn't used at all. And so I thought to myself, okay, as an Australian watching some Australian actors that I really know speaking with American accents, I think it's just neglecting Australia, and it's given that impression that Australia cannot actually produce something that was going to appeal to people. And once again, that is down to the fact that of what's come before it, with all that crap that's polluted Australian screens. And so Australian cinema is actually making a comeback, but it's still got a lot of work to do in order to redeem itself from the crap that's come before it. And I think that is one of the reasons why the American side of this film really took full effect. And so that was a minute problem, as I said, that I could overlook, but I couldn't overlook the other problems, which I'll go into a little bit later. But I will say that at the start of this movie, it was very funny, and it really set the mood for what the rest of the film was going to be. Now, in a horror comedy, you really have to nail the tone at the start of the movie to get the audience sucked in. And I think the start of this film, where you've got the parents bickering between each other, I thought it was laugh out loud funny, and that set the tone that this is going to be a quirky style of movie. This is going to be like a Peter Jackson film or a New Zealand horror comedy that really nails what it is to have that quirkiness, to actually elevate it to a tone where it is a horror comedy and it's not taking itself too seriously. And so this movie has that, and I thought, yes, okay, I'm laughing out loud. The cinematography is very good. It captures the seasonal horror, the horror film very well. It's a festive horror film. You got Christmas carols, and so it's definitely that type of movie where you can put it on at this particular time of year, and you can actually get into the spirit. And so the start of the movie really does set all the foundations very well, but unfortunately as the movie goes on, it forgets that foundation, and so it's not as funny as it was at the start when you actually get to the end of the film. And that's something, as I said, I'll go into a little bit later, but I thought the cinematography really captures the quirkiness very well. Is that you've got this young kid who's trying to impress this babysitter, and I was reminded for another film that was very recent called The Babysitter, and that was a very similar tone at the start of this film, and I thought, okay, I'm really getting into it. As I said, it's a Christmas seasonal horror film, and you're not taking yourself too seriously, and it didn't feel like the film was as well. But then it also goes into very dark avenues, and those dark avenues actually surprised me. It was actually quite horrific, some of these kill scenes. I thought, okay, this does elevate itself a little bit past PG-13, and so that's something I really liked as well. There's some very good horror set pieces that were complemented by very good camera angles. So as far as production is concerned, it is very competent, and I thought although the American accents were with the Australian actors, they still did a very good job at creating something that I thought I could lose myself into for the majority of the film. But unfortunately, that is where the positives stop. And as I said, this movie doesn't really know what it wants to be. It's a film that is plagued by indecision. It's a very indecisive film where you've got this horror comedy aspect that is very good at the start, but then it forgets what it wants to be. It doesn't have any comedy after that. And so I didn't laugh, and I thought to myself, okay, has the director forgotten that he wants to make this horror comedies because he's gone into the serious aspect a little bit too much? And that would have been okay if the serious aspect worked, but there are a lot of elements to the serious aspect that prevent it from being the movie that it wants to be, and that number one killer to this film is the villain. Now, the reason why I say number one killer is that it actually kills the film in all the wrong ways, because the villain has no presence whatsoever. The villain is very mediocre. He doesn't have any fear factor. There is no intimidation, and he just becomes very irritating. And so because you don't have a very interesting villain, when it's taking itself too seriously, you start to become bored. It's because I thought to myself, all right, this is a very this movie is not self-aware. And so when it comes into the serious aspects, because it's lacking those elements to make the serious aspects work, I kept thinking that the tonal differences in this movie really prevent it from being an enjoyable experience. Is that I was confused. I didn't know what this movie wanted to be. Did it want to be a comedy? Because at the start of the film, it really does get you into the comedy aspect, but then it forgets it, and then it just meanders along, and it taking itself too seriously, and unfortunately the serious aspects don't complement what the movie wants to be, and unfortunately it just falls flat. I thought the ending was an ending that really redeemed itself a little bit, but then it goes a little bit extra after that ending where I thought it really should have stopped. It goes that extra step further, and it completely ruins the ending that I thought was actually the ending itself. And so it goes a little bit too far, and it really does shoot itself in the foot, and that's basically the way I can sum this movie up. It really shoots itself in the foot. It didn't have the material to be a comedy, and it really didn't have the material to be a horror film, so in the end what it is a very pedestrian film that I can understand why it didn't get any recognition or attention, and it's definitely one that's going to be swept under the carpet, and it's not coming recommended. So overall, for Better Watch Out, I'm only going to give this one 1.5 stars. Really disappointed. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next, thank you for watching movies, and I'll see you later.